A bit of a wanker here, okay? I'm wanking on the Wankers.
Hey guys, Greg here. So, who are the biggest musical wankers of 2024? And yes, I borrowed this idea from Mazzy, Norm Maslov, friend of mine. We've been on each other's channels. We've hung out together. And I thought, okay, he's going to do his typical rant where he calls out anybody who's not liberal enough for him. And he didn't do that kind of video this year, so good for him. Of course, he mentioned Morrissey, you know. And then he said he's sick of mentioning Morrissey. My son just went to see Morrissey for the second time in 3 days. Anyway, I thought, okay, I'm going to make a video that's going to, you know, pull the rug out from Mazzy because I'm going to mention the biggest musical wanker of all time, and Mazzy's not going to include him. And lo and behold, 5 minutes into the video, Mazzy mentions the guy that I was going to mention, and I think his name is Daniel Ek, the CEO of Spotify, who just announced that he's worth $4 billion. $4 billion for creating a very valuable company in terms of market share or whatever, but a company that's dedicated to squeezing as much juice as it can from working musicians. So that's going to be a theme of this video. My list of musical wankers is going to include a lot of people and companies that are ripping off hardworking musicians. So Spotify, it's just a crappy business model. Okay, I pay for streaming with Apple. I think it's 10 or 15 bucks a month. And it's mostly my wife listening to a playlist of songs we already have records of, but it's like she would rather hear her playlist of 250 songs from the 80s and 90s than get up and switch records every 5 minutes. But the whole streaming model that all you have to do is pay $10 or $15 a month and you can have all the music you can possibly consume, that's not a workable business model for musicians. And Spotify has taken it multiple steps further by filling their playlists with fake artists. In other words, they'll get an artist to make some songs that sound like they belong on this particular playlist, but they own the rights to the music completely because they hire the artist to do it as a work for hire. It's like, hey, we're going to give you $6,000 to make a song that sounds like XYZ or an album, and we're going to put that on our playlist, but we own it completely. So Spotify is doing what we call vertical integration, owning the means of production. And they're also, I don't know if they're doing AI to rip artists off yet, but that's a whole other story. People like Megan Thee Stallion, anybody who took millions and millions of dollars to supposedly support a candidate when you didn't have anything to add to the discourse, you didn't have any intelligent thing to say, all you did was get up on stage and dance around, doing a mediocre dance to a mediocre song, and you collected millions of dollars, which are campaign contributions of hardworking people giving their $10s and $20. That whole list, whether you're on the right or the left, that makes you a wanker. You didn't add anything to the discourse. You didn't have anything to say. You just did your dancey dance. Okay, that's number 2. Number 3, Yacht Rock, the movie, the makers of Yacht Rock. I already did a big video on this. I'll just reiterate it very quickly. I have no problem with that style of music, but it was an artificial label added on to this style of music that had nothing to do with the original music makers. So I'm sure it's a fun movie. I'm sure you can enjoy it, but go watch my other movie about Yacht, my other video about Yacht Rock if you want. Another mega CEO corporation is called Hipgnosis, the Hipgnosis Song Group. Have you guys heard of this? Current CEO is Ben Katofsky, but it was actually founded by some sort of evil villain character named Mercuriadis. Hipgnosis is doing for musical catalogues the same thing that Spotify is doing for current music. Hipgnosis is taking, it's like a hedge fund. It's traded. It was traded on the London stock market for a while. They basically took hundreds of millions of dollars of investor money to buy out the catalogs of many of your favorite classic artists. So, you know, you heard Bob Dylan sold his for, I don't know, 500 or 600 million, and Fleetwood Mac, and the list on the Wikipedia page is like hundreds and hundreds of artists that have sold out all future rights to their music in exchange for a big lump of cash today. And if you're an older artist, if you're in your 70s or 80s, it makes sense because, hey, you can enjoy that music now and you probably paid less tax on it. And there's a whole financial set of reasons why you should do that as an artist. But to turn the catalogs of great music into this financial asset, the guy from Hipgnosis said, classic songs are a better, more stable investment than oil or precious metals. Okay, now we've got the evil, greedy capitalists taking over the music business, which they've always done. In this example, he's basically saying that we're going to trade your artistic control of your legacy for a big chunk of gold today, but now we're in charge of what happens to your musical legacy going forward. And to monetize that song catalog, they're going to have to license the crap out of those songs. So you're going to hear those classic songs in every kind of frickin' commercial, and the artist is going to be like, imagine Bob Dylan or, I don't know, whoever, George Harrison saying, I didn't want my song being used in an Exxon commercial or a Monsanto commercial or a Pfizer commercial. That's not what I wanted. That's not my musical legacy. And you're like, tough. You sold us the rights. We can do whatever we want with it. So there's going to be a huge push to continually over-license all these classic tunes to the point where you guys are going to be sick of hearing them. But it's already failing, okay? They're probably charging too much to license a song. Their revenue is down. They've had all kinds of machinations about who owns the company, who sold to what. Blackstone was involved, and not BlackRock, Blackstone. And now you've got, musical legacies being treated just like a portfolio of stocks and bonds and hedge funds. And what I think is going to happen is, first of all, they're overestimating the value of these songs. In 10 or 20 years, when the boomers are going to be dead or half dead, the next generation of kids aren't going to care about old songs by Bob Dylan and Fleetwood Mac, and make room for younger artists and quit just enough with the nostalgia about the freaking 70s and 80s and 90s. There are new people making good music today. Now there's a financial reason why those people are going to be shoved aside, because Hipgnosis has to keep figuring out how to monetize these songs that are 30 and 40 years old. And the producers of the movies who want to use the tunes are going to be like, you want $200,000 for me to use a 30-second sample? I'll just go hire a sound-alike to do it. Well, you still might have to pay a royalty, but not the mechanical sync rights. Producers are going to turn up their nose and say, I'm not going to use it. I'm going to use something else. I'm going to hire somebody else. So there's already evidence that this business model is not doing so well. Okay. So Mazzy mentioned something on his video, and he was basically calling out his fans, the vinyl buying public, a bunch of wankers for their long list of complaints. One of these complaints is, which I share, Mazzy's basically calling out the complainers like me. You guys, every time a big box set comes out, you say it's just a cash grab. So I got into it with Mazzy on his channel. I said, look, if there's a $500 box set from the Beatles or Kiss or whoever, the artist who made the music is only getting paid royalties on the vinyl and CD, which might only be 20% of that price, that retail price. I could be off. The $500 price, 98.3% of that money is going to the label, not to the artist, because they only have to pay the artist on what's called the mechanical reproduction rights of the vinyl and the CD. They don't have to pay the artist on the posters and the postcards and the t-shirt and the tote bag and all that other BS. And Mazzy said, well, there's graphic artists working at the label and they're getting paid. They got to get paid too. They would have got paid anyway if they're on staff. They're not getting a percentage. So I do stick with my complaint that all of this, a lot of these boxes are cash grabs. They're pulling stuff off the cutting room floor that was meant to stay on the cutting room floor. Look, an album, if an artist, whether it's Pink Floyd or Led Zeppelin or the Beatles, when they put out an album, That is their artistic vision. And for somebody to come along 40 years later and say, you know what, all the stuff that you edited out and you threw away and you left on the cutting room floor, we're going to issue that also. So I didn't want that stuff issued. I specifically curated the 10 songs I wanted on that label or on that album, and the label comes along and says, we're just going to sweep all these things off the cutting room floor and feed it to the customers at 10 times the original price. So yeah, I'm sticking by cash grab, and every dollar spent on putting out one of these retro box sets is a dollar that was not spent on developing new artists. And that's where the music industry is today. Nostalgia, rehashing, rebooting, recycling, retooling, regurgitating old music for you nostalgia freaks. Get over the nostalgia. Okay, yeah, there's lots of songs I love that are old, but I don't need 29 versions of Abbey Road or Dark Side of the Moon. Okay. Okay, let's get back to the real wankers, okay? Okay, here is a ever-present, evergreen addition to the wankers of the year. It's the Euro trash labels that are putting out unauthorized classic jazz. They're putting out other stuff, but especially classic jazz, the labels DOL, Doxy, Wax Time, Waxy. These Euro trash, I use the word trash very specifically. These labels are putting out records that were briefly removed from copyright in Europe. They were not removed from copyright in the United States, so they don't really have a legal right to sell them in the United States, but they're doing it anyway, and since it's just jazz, the record labels haven't really done a good job of protecting their rights. But what they're doing is stealing from musicians. Again with the stealing from musicians. If you want to rip somebody off, rip off poor black jazz musicians who barely made any money during their life, or whose kids and grandkids are entitled to payment from stuff that their dads did. The copyright rule applied to the recording. It did not apply to the royalties. And you're entitled to royalties 75 years after death. So all the great jazz guys who made records in the 50s, 60s, 70s, even if they died, their family's still entitled to royalties. And I'm going to add to the list of wankers the record stores that are selling this junk. I go into my local record store and there's Bill Evans. Everybody digs Bill Evans or whatever. You know, $18.99 from Wax Time or $21.99 from OJC or Riverside or whatever. Pay the extra $3 to get the authorized recording where the royalties are going where they belong, and it's coming from an analog master. All this Euro trash stuff is not coming from analog masters. It's coming from CDs, so they don't sound good. They're not good pressings. Don't tell me they take good care of their employees. They're probably ripping off their employees just like they're ripping off musicians. Okay, Euro trash labels, always on my wanker list. How about a guy named Billy McFarland? Who is he? He created a piece of garbage called the Fyre Festival, and you guys have seen at least 2 documentaries on what a disaster that was. The greatest music festival of all time. You know, it was a big disaster. All of 2024, he was promoting Fyre Festival 2. Fyre Festival 2 is accepting, you can buy tickets, and we've announced that it's going to be the location, an unknown mystery island in the Caribbean off the Mexican coast. He hasn't told us what island. And he said, oh yeah, we've already booked artists. And then later he said, well, we haven't booked any artists. This guy, Billy McFarland, is doing for music festivals. Billy McFarland is doing for music festivals what Hitler did for train rides. Okay, enough said. Check out his website. It's nonsense. It's garbage. Billy is full of crap. Hey, prove me wrong. He's selling tickets for up to $1 million. Okay, coming up to the very end of my list. MTV, are they a music site anymore? My wife's sitting here today watching reruns of Seinfeld, and every commercial break there's a commercial for RuPaul's Drag Race, whatever it is. Nothing. Hey, if that's your thing and you're into that, great. But that's all MTV has. If you go to their website, that's splashed all over their website is RuPaul. Like, it doesn't have anything to do with music. If you're the arbiter and cultural leader of music, like MTV sort of was in the 80s. Great, talk about music. But it's like KFC. If you're not doing that anymore, change your name. Get rid of the MTV. Quit calling yourself music anything if your whole network has nothing to do with music. MTV, when Paramount took them over, shut down MTV News. They just turned it off, wiped out 20 years of reporting and cultural news and information. So MTV, you're on the list of top wankers of the year, of the decade. And I think that's about it, guys. And let me know P. Diddy. I forgot to mention, the biggest of all. Mazzy, you missed him. P. Diddy. He's number one on the list. He's the number one wanker in the music business. And maybe Jay-Z and whoever else is doing the Diddy on people and Diddy partying. 2025, hopefully we'll find out what's really going on at those parties. And that's it, guys. Have a great year.
A bit of a wanker here, okay? I'm wanking on the wankers.
A bit of a wanker here, okay? I'm wanking on the wankers.
I'm wanking on the wankers.